harness AI, streamline operations, and unlock opportunities. Please welcome New York Times best-selling author and Chief of Staff at Appwire, Chris Brogan.
Videos like that because I'm the least hyped person you'll ever meet. It's like your favorite rock band being followed by like an insurance agent. But it's my job to kind of pep you up, right? First day back, you know, there was a casino across the way, judging by all those loud slamming doors all night long. I think you were all out in it. I wanted to start with who I am because I think if you look at a guy like me on stage, you're like, who's this idiot? And why is he going to talk to us about AI? And why should I listen? First off, born and raised in Maine. Technically, I was born in Waterville, but that's because I was impatient. I was raised in Augusta. So driving up the highway to here, I was raised in Augusta. I lived in Bangor for 1 year when I was 2 years old, and they kicked me out. Back down to Augusta we went. And then Pittsfield, Maine for a little bit, and then I came down to Massachusetts, I'm sorry. And I've lived there ever since, but I always just tell people I'm from Maine. And they're like, well, when did you move away? And I'm like, and they go, oh. So I'm from here. On the way back home, I'm gonna go buy Whippers in Augusta and get an Italian, because they don't make those in Massachusetts. I got my first real big argument with a Greek restaurant down there, because I said I'd like a ham Italian, and he said, which one? And I was a teenager, and I didn't even know what he was asking. We got to fight. What I learned about that, this is a side note, has nothing to do with today's speech. What I learned about that is if I made that guy mad, he'd put way more stuff on the sub. So I'd get him super pissed, and then I would get the best meat coverage in high school. And you know, anybody who has a high school kid or remembers being a high school kid, you could eat about a human body worth of food any given day. So it was really important to get that handle. Now, do you get a sense of how this speech is going to go compared to like Susan later, who's going to be like smart and there'll be slides. And I brought a very high-tech device on stage. And look, I know you probably can't see it, but there's an arrow. Do you see the arrow? Do you know why? Because 100% of the time, it's like a USB in my pocket, and I take it out and it's upside down and backwards. You know the old USB, the one you had to guess which one it was, and no matter which one it was always wrong? You know why they invented USB-C? Because they should never have had USB-A. Who wanted? What is that, like a sobriety test? Trying to plug in your mouse and you're like, I'm gonna have to quit my job. There's Home Depot now. When I grew up, it was Grossman's. Did you have Grossman's as far north up here? I don't know. Grossman's Lumber. When you walked into a Home Depot, you don't walk around and go, gee, what kind of project should I do? Unless you're like a weird like tool fetishist. Like, usually you're in there because you peel the tile off of your wall and realize there's rot, and now you're in real trouble and you're gonna be out for about 30 grand worth of material, right? You don't start with, what should I do today? Oh, look, tile. The way people get AI conversations wrong is they talk to you like it's the coolest thing. But it isn't. Nothing's the coolest thing, right? Do you, I'm like scanning the room and I'm judging who started with an all-glass phone versus who had a BlackBerry versus who had like T9 typing. Who had T9 typing when you were really mad at someone, you were like, G, O, and you'd like get over your argument before you even sent it because it was too much work. My point, and there kind of is one, I have notes to keep me on track, don't worry about my ADD. My point is, there used to not be all glass devices, and then it was ubiquitous. Can you imagine going to a conference and someone going, you guys aren't gonna believe this, telephones are gonna just be all glass. Do you remember the whale days when only conversation you have is about coverage and minutes? And then Apple shows up and says, apps, and we all forget everything we're talking about. We're all like, oh, yeah, apps, that's cool, right? So now that's the only question you have. Oh, what's that app do? Is this a cool app? That's what AI is. AI is the next piece of glass. It's the next, this is just a thing you do. And so me talking about it today is a one-off. I will never give a speech on AI again in my career. Shouldn't really now either, but this is what you get. Carrie's gonna talk about it smarter later. By the way, why shouldn't Maine be the head of AI? It's in the name of your state. You can't spell Maine without AI. I'm thinking about a t-shirt for that one. The hype about this is real, right? I mean, if you go on YouTube, if some of you are YouTuber types, if you go on YouTube, there's a whole bunch of really slick-haired people telling you why it's really cool and why you're going to make $800,000 and blah, blah, blah. And you can start your side hustle with AI, and you can make children's books and coloring books and all that sort of thing. That's not interesting. None of us need to care about that. None of us need to know it. The fears are real. Oh no, if I don't know AI, I'm not going to be able to do my job. That one's kind of real, and I'll explain. I'll give you a real world example. This happened. I work at a software company. I'm the chief of staff. I work directly with the CEO. I'm responsible for the executive team, for the board of directors, that sort of thing, but I also interact with everybody in the whole company. I had a bunch of developers come with an interesting story. They had a problem. I don't know how to write code, so if I say any of the words, you guys will just all look at me funny, but for simplification, they would write some code stuff, they would put brackets, they would write a little more stuff, put brackets, write a little more stuff, put brackets, and it broke. And they were like, well, it worked if we put 2 things, how come we can't put 3 things? And all my smartest engineers worked on this problem. There were 11 engineers, they worked hundreds of hours, and they couldn't solve it. Hundreds of hours combined with 30-ish year experience, 20-ish year experience, could not solve the problem. One of them finally goes, I'll ask ChatGPT. Put the question in, put the code in, it said, oh, here's your problem. Because, like, any of us software developers? Because I am not. Okay, good, none. This is why we're not software developers. I'm gonna give it to you right now. Words, brackets, words, brackets, words, parentheses. It's different over here. And I said, so what does that mean? And they were like, we don't know, none of us know. But when we did what ChatGPT told us, it was fixed. That was a 5,840x speed increase in solving the problem. Hundreds of hours times that many people times whatever. ChatGPT did it in 1 minute and everyone went, oh, and then went back to work. That's the thing. That's the interesting thing. That's the stuff that's gonna happen. So I'm gonna talk a couple of examples of that. And I'm also gonna talk a little bit about sort of the world out there. And like I said, Carrie's gonna do a one-on-one, he's gonna do some Q&A. If questions are pouring into your head, go to Carrie's thing as well, his breakout. There's this thing you hear about called LLMs. This is like when you ask ChatGPT a question. How many people have at least once asked it a question? All right, good chunk of you. How many people use it daily like a religious person and I'm just singing your language? Okay, cool. If you're using it for writing, by the way, I'll fight you later. As a book author, I have my thoughts on that one. LLMs are the first wave of it. Do you remember the very first digital cameras? Do you remember when like the first web video was out and it would be like this big and we'd be like, that's so cool. And you'd see like pixely web stuff and you'd be like, this is amazing. It was not much better than in the way old days when like in the 80s and you'd be on Cinemax doing this with the dial, trying to see if you could see stuff. I like that joke because it could mean 2 things. The way that this technology works today is the worst it will ever work. It's a dumb thing to say, but if you've tried it and you're like, it's like trying the web video way back when. And now we watch hours of it. The number 2 search engine in the world is YouTube. Most of us, if you have children of a certain age, never go to Google, they 100% go to YouTube or Reddit. ChatGPT just launched SearchGPT. Everybody at Google's like, oh, we're gonna die. If you're an SEO expert, sorry. It's gonna be really rough waters for you for some amount of time. But, and this gets really vague and whatever, there's LLMs which is when you talk back and forth with the person. We'll get back to those because that's what I'm going to talk mostly about. But what comes right after that are what are called agents. Agents like when you see the Matrix, except they don't have guns yet. But agents, what agents are going to do is, and I've seen demos of this, it's just baloney, it doesn't really work yet, but for instance, if there's a device called the Rabbit that came out at CES in January, and this guy said, this is going to replace your phone. Anytime someone says this will replace your phone, ignore them. That's like when Apple released that fishbowl that they thought we'd pay $4,000 to walk around with on our noggin. You know who wears that on their head? Douches. That's just a douche detector. Half of them wear it in their Cybertruck just to make it completely clear. I don't know about Maine, but down in Massachusetts we see Cybertrucks. It's the closest we're going to get back to witch hunting. Tell me you're from away without telling me you're from away. Okay, I got off on a tangent. Agents. What an agent is going to be able to do is I've got to fly out to Vienna to hang out with some of my team. I'm going to say, I got to get to Vienna on Thursday. I'm going to be there 3 days. What the agent is going to do is all of it. Here's his flyer points. Here's the places he's got the loyalty. Here's where he has the most loyalty. Here's the flights that match the times he said. Here's the seat assignment that he likes because he's tall and wide. These are all the things it's going to know how to do, and it's going to book, or it's not going to book. It's going to go, I picked it all out. I found your hotel. This is the kind of hotel chain you have points in. By the way, it's nice. I asked for the worst possible room. That's my preference. And then it'll spit it all back and go, what do you think? And I'll say yes. And it knows my card, so it just goes for it. That's what's coming. And I don't mean coming like, sometime in the future. I mean like 2025, early 26. For marketers, that should be frightening because what that doesn't do is allow the core element of marketing. Well, have you thought about me? Why not try my service? I'm different than what you already use. That cuts all of that out. So one thought to bring away from this, how do I market in a world where agents can cut me out of the conversation? Because it's not a web banner. It is not sponsoring breakfast, which someone of you should have done. It is not the experience of being even invited to the conversation because your robot man is talking to a bunch of other robot men and no one's involved that's on the human side, right? That's tricky. Now, if you're me and you hear that, you go, doot, and you forget everything I just said and you think, later I'm gonna go get a sandwich because it's so hard to figure out and solve that problem. That's why I'm not gonna talk about agents because it's really cool when it's working for you and it sucks if you're the marketer. It's like spam, right? You write incredible targeted content and send it to someone, they receive spam. Oops. That's the problem with agents. We're gonna go back to LLMs though, because they're more fun. World. You know what makes this a stupid idea? This arrow, everything makes this notepad a stupid idea. If I dropped this on the way to the stage, there goes my speech. If I left this in my hotel room, that's the only copy of my speech. The minute I put it in something on the cloud, I can access it from anywhere. Who uses Apple Notes? Who likes Apple Notes because it's on all your devices? Who right now could spill water on their laptop and not cry because everything is already backed up, right? See, I got 5 of you. Okay, we could have another conversation. I had a conversation, there's a person, I'm gonna shame them because they're not here. I had a conversation with a person at my company and they're responsible for talking with our biggest customers. 55% of the Fortune 500 uses my products. That is like Apple and Northrop Grumman and all these like big ass companies. And I said to her, I said, all these great conversations you're having, where does the information go when you're done? And she made that face that you know the answer is nowhere. And I said, so if I hit you, not even with a car, if I run you over with like a lawnmower, like there goes all of the conversations that you've had with all the biggest companies in the world as they relate to my company. And she was like, I don't want to say yes right now. You know, it's like, who broke that? And you see the one person who definitely broke that? That's what happened. Where we're going and what we need, it's a data world. You heard big data before? Like a long time ago, people started getting excited about big data and then you never heard about it again. Companies who can harness and do interesting stuff with data, even small information, are gonna do better. Who lives in a CRM? Who here is like responsible for keeping a CRM full and loving and all that? If you can harness that, you get great stuff. Here's where it gets kind of neat. Here's where LLM stuff gets kind of neat. I'm going to switch context for a minute, but pretend we're talking about the same sort of thing. We have a support organization, because again, we sell software, and a lion's share of the software problems are configuration problems. And configuration problems come because a lot of the software we sell is not Angry Birds. It's like a product and portfolio management, which is like if you use Microsoft Project, this sits way above Microsoft Project and checks out your whole big giant company and makes sure that like there's not a bunch of people doing the same thing in other parts of the company and that sort of thing. Resource stuff. It's really hard to install. It's like 1990s stereos. You remember the ones that hid behind the glass? They had like 108 little things you'd plug in the back, and they were so cool, and we all wanted one. And then we grew up and like we just have a phone in our pocket like an idiot. It's like that. We found, so we have level 1, level 2, and level 3 support. Level 3 is when you call the engineer because it's so effed up that they've got to go get a guy who wrote some of it to fix the problem you've made. Level 1 is the first person you call anywhere you've ever called customer support, anywhere. Thank you for calling. Can I confirm everything about you? Can you tell me your last 4 of your social? Can you tell me your mom's best friends, neighbors, kid? And then they ask you the most absolutely awful questions, like, well, have you tried restarting it? I would pay money to skip that guy. If that was a service company's offer, well, they, some do concierge class service, right? Just like just doctor's offices. I would pay to skip the front desk. I would even take a mid-level person back there. They don't have to be a doctor. They just, I don't know, phlebotomist would do. Just not the front desk. We came up with an LLM agent that is as good as our level 3. So now what we do is we put that next to every single level 1 person. So that level 1 person doesn't start with have you rebooted so that they can go get their lunch. That level 1 person types into GPT, this is what this person said they have for problems. The thing spits back the knowledge bases that we fed into it and says, how about this? And he goes, oh, how about this? And the guy goes, oh my gosh, you just solved it. What does that do? Customer support is all about time, right? It's about how minimal amount of time can you keep somebody on the phone. It's called average call handling. We save money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. What we also have to do is not hire a bunch more level 3 people because I have a robot in a box who will gladly do it until they're dead. So we can reallocate those resource dollars to other better jobs. You know who doesn't want to be in support? Every human alive. Has anyone ever worked support? I did for the phone company. Not fun, right? All you think all day is, why couldn't I have learned something really cool? Or why couldn't I have sold like Sponge Daddy? Because I would never have to come to my job and be plugged to the wall. You can do this now with the GPT that you pay for. Is it 4 or whatever, at a plus or something? We have the enterprise one. The enterprise one, the only thing it gives you that you don't get with the paid one is mine says, we'll never use your stuff to train other people. So I can put dangerous documents in that thing that would like make our company sad and trust their legal statement that says that they won't share that. You can't, but you can give a lot of really good information to the device. I'm gonna give you another couple examples. We do a leadership training program at my company, looking at my leadership training guy. We're a global company. We have offices in Poland, we have offices in Germany, Switzerland, India, I'm gonna forget a few, France, Spain, etc. Many languages where I'm going, 225 languages overall in our company. When they are made to pair with each other, they all speak at least rudimentary English, but this is a leadership training program. So you gotta go deep, you gotta talk about like your feelings and I don't know, things people not named me do. And what we learned was you can fill in the information Here's the prompt we gave basically to the robots. We said, okay, I speak English. Here are my results on my leadership. StrengthsFinder, does anyone know StrengthsFinder? Okay. Here's my results on StrengthsFinder. My partner speaks Polish. Here's her results. Can you give us instructions on how better to interact with each other as buddies? And it says, sure. Now, not even asking for this, it gave my English-speaking person English information. It gave my Polish-speaking person Polish information and said, this is how you guys can interact. Suddenly, the results from that pair is higher than the rest of the leadership training course. They're all taking the same material. One of them used GPT to say, how can we better work with each other? Fixed. That is not that hard, right? That was one instruction, and not even a really good instruction, and now they're working better. The limitation of using this technology is you thinking, I don't know what to ask it. I don't really know how to get where I want to go. And the other limitation is you asked it something kind of vague, it gave you an awful answer, and you said, well, that's not any good. Which is like, buying a set of paints and going, I'm not Leonardo da Vinci. You gotta learn, right? You gotta understand the context, you gotta learn syntax. But you know what's cool now? GPT realized and figured out that we're stupid. By the way, there's gazillions of AI apps. I'm not gonna talk about another one. There's Claude, I will talk about two more. There's Claude, there's Gemini, etc. Especially media makers in the room, people making like podcasts or video shows and that sort of thing. I'm gonna make you sadder. These technologies now know that we're so dumb that you can ask them, can you tell me how to ask you this question better? And it goes, sure. I have a kid on the spectrum, and I have a kid that's probably on the spectrum but just didn't quite pass that test. You have to be really specific when you talk to people who are autistic. Guess who else? ChatGPT. Guess who else? Engineers. If you've ever met or are unfortunately married to an engineer, you know what I'm saying. Put it in the sink is not the same as put it in the sink and put water in it, you idiot. So, where am I? Oh. The best thing that you can start to think about with GPT specifically, but in general, think of these tools as a cognitive partner. Now, the reason you want to write that phrase down is you're going to forget it in about 8 minutes and never remember it again in your life. Dr. Karim Lakhani, who is from Harvard, calls it a cognitive partner. What that means is a study pal, somebody to ask questions to, someone to bounce ideas off of. So I'm a chief of staff. I work with executives all day. Every now and again, I'm in a sort of box where I think, oh no, why is this person so dumb? And I can't ask them that question because it turns out, according to HR, that's not cool. So I ask GPT, why is that person so dumb? And they're like, well, and then it'll try to be diplomatic like I should be. And it'll say, well, have you thought this way or have you asked this question? 100% of the time, it will give me an angle of attack that I hadn't thought about. Oh, maybe they're not dumb. I write back every time it tells me that, no, I think they are. And it goes, okay, well, presuming they're dumb, maybe they need some help getting a little bit more skill in this spot. And I'm like, okay. So you can ask it real crazy questions. My boss is dead set on doing this thing. I think it is terrible. Help me talk them out of it. What's the best solution? Now, when you go and talk with Carrie, when he gives you the presentation, he's going to talk to you how to write one of these things. Assume you are a really good leadership coach. I'm going to give you just a little bit of that syntax, just because it'll be a little helpful. Assume you are an executive leadership coach with 20 years experience teaching software executives how to do better at executing a global strategy. These executives have read books like Trust Agents by Chris Brogan, and some other books by other people who also write books. And these people listen to these podcasts. These people are this. The more little scoop you give on this, the more the bot goes, oh, I get what you're getting at. Now I'm going to give you another one. This is, by the way, that's called context cheating, is when you give it more stuff. Like, help me come up with goals for my new employee. We're gonna use the SMART framework, and then you explain the SMART framework. You just copy and paste it because it's on like 2.9 million websites, and you just paste it in. Here's the other thing GPT can do. This one I love. It can do character recognition. So you can take a piece of paper with handwriting and spit it on there and say, translate that. My CFO might be really good with numbers, but I don't think he knows there are 26 letters. There are 26 sticks that all look like a bird stepped on the page. And he handed me some document one time, and I looked at it and I thought it was in code. I figured I'm gonna have to get some real good deciphering going on here. But I gave it to GPT and it was like, I got this. And it got all of it but one word. And so I had to take a photo of the word and send it to him in Slack and say, not even a robot knows what you said. That's called context hacking. The first one about like giving it more and more of the information. I'm gonna give you another one, context cheating. The next one is chew the food. And what I mean chew the food, give the robot as much as you can ahead of time. So for instance, if you pay for GPT Plus, I don't mean the freebie that you're still stuck using because your boss doesn't believe this. If you pay, you can say things like, I'm gonna give you my brand guidelines documents, here they all are. I'm gonna give you the last 5 projects we did, here they all are. Can you spit something out to me to tell me what I missed? And can you recommend some things that I am missing based on this? Or, we anticipated 4,000 units of sales. We got 280 units of sales. Let's brainstorm what I did wrong and give him all the materials. You now have a mentor in a box, a cognitive learning partner, who can now talk you through the process that you've had going on. And when I say chew the food, give them the information it's gonna need. Don't just keep asking it to go find stuff. There's one problem that all LLMs and AI tools still have right now, which is called hallucination. We've heard of this, right? Hallucination. That means it gives you an answer that sounds definitive, but it's wrong. I call it being male. Men are so confidently wrong so often it's a category. But GPT can do that too. And if you don't work extra hard to like make sure you disavow it of all possible mistakes it can make, it will make mistakes. There's a fairly famous one about, is it raspberries? So it's how many R's in raspberries, and you can tell it, no, there's only one. Oh, I guess you're right then. Like you could like bully the thing into giving you a wrong answer. And so you have to watch for that still. That hasn't gone away. It will go away, but the robot is kind of conflicted there because it wants to answer the right thing, but it is also trying to please you like sometimes your employees do. Ever have an employee that tells you what you want to hear, even if it's utterly wrong, and gives you the best possible outcome answer for a date for a delivery of something, and it is absolutely not reachable? Yeah, robots do that for you too. One last one on the marketing side, and we'll talk about a couple more things. I'm also going to open it up to questions, and I also have some takeaways for some ways to do it. This one's just called level 1, level 2, level 3. So if you want GPT, for instance, to help you work on campaign materials, for instance, you say to it, I'm brainstorming ideas. You are a marketing professional in construction marketing. You make fences and outdoor railings and decks and stuff like that. A level 1 campaign would be an email campaign. A level 2 campaign would be a webinar, maybe even a small live event. I need level 3 ideas. By seeding it with the level 1 and the level 2 ideas, you are setting it up for better success to give you ideas you haven't heard. Because have you had that experience? You've asked it for something and it gives you the most basic feedback you could ever possibly have, and you think, this is dumb, I don't know why that guy told me to use it. That's the trick. It's the level 1, level 2, level 3 trick. Again, you can help it by showing it what you've already done and feed it in, because then you skip some of that too, right? I was at a conference many years ago, Blog World and New Media Expo in Las Vegas, and this guy was walking down the hallway, and he was chasing my friend Dave, who worked for SAS at the time, down in Cary, North Carolina, big giant software company. He said, you know what you guys need? You need a podcast. And Dave stopped in the hallway and he said, I have a podcast. I'm on episode 156. Did you do any research before you decided to pitch me in a hallway? He said, why don't you tuck your shirt in and get out of here? Dave was the nicest guy I've ever known, but I guess this guy had been bothering him for like a mile. Level 1, level 2, level 3. So speaking of podcasts, speaking of media, I saw the coolest demo that's also a terrifying demo. I started blogging in 1998 when it was called journaling. I started my first podcast in 2005. Tell me if you don't think this is brilliant. I called it Fat Guy Gets Fit. Because what I figured is I could run this podcast endlessly because I'm never getting fit. So it was like evergreen content, right? And I still have a different show now. It's called The Backpack Show. It's every Friday at 11 a.m. on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter, I think. No one goes to Twitter, so I'm basically just broadcasting it to raccoons. But I saw this thing, Gemini, which is Google's version of ChatGPT or whatever. It's Google's LLM. Gemini, by the way, is Pepsi okay of AI tools right now? And you're like, oh, okay, I guess. There's a tool inside it that's really cool. I'm looking at Dan again. It's called Notebook LM. So it is notebooklm.google.com. You can feed it in all kinds of documents. You can give it full access to your Google Docs. So if you're a Google shop, you can put all your Google Docs into it and it'll know what to do. This is where it gets crazy cool. This is not out to the public yet, but it's like around the corner, like a week or so. You can take like a 100 and something page brief and you can say, turn this into a podcast. You do this, you can pick, I want 2 hosts. I want a man and a woman. I want them to be in their 30s. I want them to argue the content of the doc. You push play and you are listening to a podcast, complete with ums, complete with mistakes. They wanted us to look at this part over here too. It sounds like people talking. It sounds like the worst podcast, but it is just like every podcast you run in this room. So if you're thinking, you know, what we gotta do is make some really cool thought leadership content. It's not leadership, I call it. If you are going to make that, your competition now is a robot voice who does it really well and does it based on a document. Because what it does is it analyzes the document deeply and then does it. How many people have gone to put on their show and they've like had 4 minutes to review the document? So they just sort of talk about the surfacey things. You know, they read the chapter titles back to you. Oh, trust agents, what does it mean to make your own game? Oh, thank you. I too have the table of contents. By the way, I will divulge something. When I run my show, The Backpack Show, and if like the guest has written some book or something, I make the GPT read the book, and I also make the GPT go sniff out all the questions that have been asked this person on all the other shows. And I say, what's a really good, unique question I can ask that maybe they haven't been asked before? I always get my favorite thing as a host when I do that. Oh, that's a good question. And then they think it over, and I feel like, and a robot did it. It's like you know, Madge with Paul Mall, if you're soaking in it, maybe it's Maybelline. So it is definitely a tool that you can use. I'm gonna go on that vein for a minute or two on a couple other things like that you can use. I also have an ungodly amount of time, and Carrie volunteered that if we have some questions, I can walk you through some of them. Please do not feel shy. Everyone says there are no stupid questions. There are, but it's likely you won't ask them. Here's the thing, if you're gonna start doing this, number one, put guardrails. Put guardrails on the process of using it at work. Because you can use it to do really cool things, but if you are using the publicly available, not enterprise copy, if you are putting your client's classified type material out onto the web, you are in jeopardy. Somebody at Samsung did that, lost his job. Several other people downstream lost their job just because they said, can you just double check this document for typos? Imagine getting fired for typos. Put guardrails around how you use it. That doesn't mean freak out. It just means make sure that you've all, like in smaller companies, make sure you've all talked to each other. Everyone understands what you're going to do, what you're not going to do, where the ways not to do it are, what not to send to people, etc. I use ChatGPT. If I have a somewhat tricky email to write, I dump the email into GPT and I say, what do you think? What I never do is just dump that back in an email and send it, right? You edit it, you double check, you make sure it works good, you put guardrails around things. Makes sense, right? That's a reasonable takeaway. Number 2, daily use. Now I'm gonna get really into me and what I do with the thing. I have, for instance, and please don't ask me afterwards because I cannot remember the name of it, but I promise if you email me, chris@chrisbrogan.com, I'll tell you. If you use Google Chrome, I don't know why I can't say Google, I didn't even drink. If you use Google Chrome, I have a thing that when you're on YouTube, you can push one button and get the whole transcript as a copy. I dump this into my GPT and I say, can you just summarize this for me because I don't want to watch this guy? And it'll tell me all the things. I can go from that to, has anyone else said anything about this detail? Or when he says this, what's your best guess on the steps that he wants me to take? Are there steps in the video or can you guess some steps for me? This is where it gets exciting, right? Daily use. I have the following little GPTs running in my left side all the time. I have language translation for Poland because it's better than Google Translate. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I can also say, can you say this more formally? Can you say this a little more humorously, etc. You might have gleaned from my talk, I like a little bit of humor. It doesn't always translate well in Polish. Polish people tend to be right down the middle. So I will sometimes put something I'm about to say into the machine and it'll go, don't say that. And then I ignore it. Because I'm male. I have one called Diet Coach. So I just recently completed my second 7-day fast. That's 7 days with just water. I did it twice because I'm dumb. And it's no food. And I asked him all kinds of questions I will not say out loud on this stage because they involve your bodily functions. And I was like, is this supposed to happen? And it was like, oh, totally. And I learned a lot of things about my body and not leaving the house. So I have a diet consultant. I also have one that I use for executive leadership where I feed in, my boss said this. Is there any other way I could perceive what the boss just said? Because what I'm hearing is this, and it'll say, no, that means the boss is telling you didn't do very well on that, but he's trying to be nice about it. Got it. So I have a leadership coach just for me. I also have one of those little, every time I'm saying this, by the way, if you've used GPT in the paid version, on the left side there are little threads that will tell you what you just kind of asked it. If you stick the same questions into the same thread, it gets better. Meaning, I don't ask my transcript coach what I ask my diet coach. And I think of them like coaches. They're all coaches to me. I don't ask my Polish language one the most common phrases I'm going to need in southern France, which was, I'm lost, I swear she said she wasn't married, and you call that a baguette? So, I used 2 of those. So you keep it sort of, The Offspring said this once, you've got to keep them separated. It's very true in the LLMs, you got to keep that left side, like the things you're doing, and keep them crisp and clear, and don't you want your whites and your colors in the laundry, it's like that, okay? Where am I? Daily use. So what that means is you might be listening to all this going, I still am not interested, I still think this is stupid, whatever. The thing that you're really into, start a thread about that. I asked a question about, I like photography, I've been doing a lot of photography. And so I asked a question about, can you help me understand, once and for all, the argument between this kind of sensor and this kind of sensor? And it gave me a pretty good explanation. When I do use the device for my interests, it keeps me in the process of doing it for organizational interest. The more you use it, the more you realize, oh, I should probably use that more. What we're coming to realize at my company is the difference in how fast someone can turn information out between someone who's using tools like this versus not is substantial. And here's the downside, people who are thinking, I don't have to listen to too much more of this and I will ignore GPT for the rest of my life. You will be performing slower than other people using the tool. That's the problem. Oh, how long is it going to take you to turn around that copy for me? Oh, 3 or 4 days. And the other guy says 35 seconds. Now maybe their copy's not so great, but you know what we care about more than we care about great? Fast. Almost everything you ever hear, ever, in any project you work on is when, right? I've always joked, I used to be a project manager, I always said I was a defective owl, because instead of saying who, I just say when. When am I gonna get that? Well, guess what? Anyone using AI tools gets it done faster. They can also use it to check things. One of mind-blowing one, who has to answer RFPs in the room? Anybody? I hate RFPs. I have received RFPs and sent back, no thanks. Like, it's $300,000 bucks. Like, I can eat chicken nuggets. Don't want it. You can plug in RFPs into this thing and you can have a database started of all the answers. There's people that sell these database things for like $100,000 or more. You can do this in GPT and Excel. You can say, these are the way I've answered all this. You can start saying, more often than not, I get these kinds of questions. You can, instead of taking their RFP, you can make your gold copy and send it and say, is there any chance you'll just go through this? I've highlighted all the parts that match yours, and I've circled the 5 that aren't. We'll get there faster together. Because you know, the person who's sending the RFP isn't like, man, I can't wait to send RFPs out. You know what they're least interested in? Collating those afterwards. I received 196 RFPs. If you help them cut the speed down, and get it to them faster, get it to them cleaner, you get a faster chance at doing this. Now they might say, no, you absolutely have to fill in my form. 90-something% of the people say that. Great, make your robot do it. This is an RFP killer. It also can say, you can put your wins and losses in there. You can say, I lose every time. Can you guess why I lost? Can you tell me, you're an absolute senior executive marketer, you're the kind of person who doesn't, responds to these kinds of things day in, day out, you're a provision expert, whatever it is. Show me what I'm doing wrong. You could say, how do I make my cover letter better? You could say, how do I make things more brief? Who here receives copy from some other part of the organization that sounds like someone was trying to rewrite a Bible? You can put it all in and say, I need this brief, please, and it'll go, here's the most salient things. You can say, here's the document that I want to make my little video about. Can you make me a script? Give it the document first, feed it first. You will lose to people using these tools to do the thing you're saying, I can just do it my way. You can also peel apples yourself, but if you work in a restaurant, there's a process, right? There's all these systems in place to do things faster. There are certain parts of business you have to do at the speed you're supposed to do it at, but there's lots of parts of the business where you can skip the boring stuff and run it through the robots, right? That's where it gets cool. It's not like, oh man, I can't wait to use these robots. It's, I can't wait to focus my time on the part where I can add the most value to my organization. Robots are there to take the crappy parts of the job away. That fear that robots are going to replace the jobs. No, they're going to replace boring jobs. And you know whose jobs they're super not going to replace for a while? Designers. You know why? Because for reasons I don't understand, robots don't know how many fingers we have. I think it's because of that how many fingers am I holding up game we like to play. And my gosh, every time you ask something like DALL-E to put words on a sign, you're like, wow, that's some letters there in some language. I have one last thing for you to think about, which is in all of your businesses, no matter your practice. I got this from HubSpot, not their technical side. I'm such a weirdo. There's their first real headquarters office. They were really proud of it. It was in Cambridge. It was across the way from their last one, which was like anyone's first office. It was like crappy. So they didn't have all kinds of money. They had some money. And so they painted all these walls white. And then the thing was, every other wall was a dry erase wall. Real cool, right? Like you run up to it, write on it with your dry erase pen. But they did every other wall. You know where I'm going, right? You already know what's going to happen. So one day this young lady comes running into the room. She's really excited. She's just up on herself. She writes, "Why hasn't anyone?" And the room screams. And she realizes she just wrote on the not dry erase wall. I showed up to HubSpot a week or so after this experience and they hadn't repainted it yet, because you gotta wait for facilities to come, reasons. And I'm looking up at that and I said, that is awesome. And they're like, you're so weird. And I said, I know, but listen. There's no better question in the universe than why hasn't anyone? That's how new things get made. Whoever made like the ketchup and the mayo fart bottles, when it used to be you shook it up and down, or you had to use knives and very many other implements in your home to get ketchup and mayonnaise out into your mouth hole. And then one day someone goes, well, if we put the lid on the bottom, fart so every kid gets to laugh. By kids, I mean me, I'm 54. But why hasn't anyone is what made that work. Well, you know what's the most incredible why hasn't anyone machine in the world? Your brain. Number 2, GPT. These kinds of tools. Why hasn't anyone blank? The other day, a friend of mine and I really streamed it. I love dad jokes. I'll give you an example. Where does a king keep his army? In his sleevey. That's the appropriate amount of laughter for that joke. I had ChatGPT write dad jokes about work stuff, and they were awful. And then we were like, man, this is the worst stuff ever. And then we thought, what's the best thing we could do with the worst stuff ever? Make employees read these into a camera. Because the faces they're gonna make, they're gonna look like there's someone right off set with a gun. They're gonna have a newspaper like Proof of Life reading these jokes. How come you don't use agile processes? Because they went away. So that was a why hasn't anyone, because we're like, if this is gonna make the worst possible jokes, we're gonna use them. All parts of the buffalo, that's what Tony Robbins used to say. I like that last one just because we can use it for dumb things too. We can use it for, making up nicknames for our colleagues. Try to keep them nice, because if any of this stuff ever leaks or you're in some inquiry or something and they pull your GPT records, bad things can happen. So says my attorney. I'm gonna head to questions. But like I said, why hasn't anyone? That was my last one. And then just a reminder, treat this like a cognitive partner. This tool will guide you towards the way that you can use it going forward. I have about 15 minutes, unless the governor comes, for
Chris,
questions.
I've got a microphone here if anyone has a question. I just want to say, you mentioned about having individual bots for people so you can talk out situations and people and how to talk to them. And I was explaining at dinner one night that I do this for a controversial client. I need to understand how to talk to them, why they were thinking the way they were thinking, and why they were doing what they were doing. To which my wife responds, "You don't ever do that for me, do you?" And I said, "Of course I don't. No."
Right. Hi.
I'm Robert. I'm in the hospitality business, and as a businessman, taxes are very important. Has anyone used ChatGPT to ask the question or feed your tax return and say, "Hey, what are the codes, tax codes that I'm missing, I'm not using on my tax return so I can lower my tax liability"? Has anyone done that?
Yes. And what has happened so far, the output of that, the question in case you didn't hear, has anyone used these kinds of AI tools for a tax return, review and that sort of a thing? Can you use this instead of TurboTax, kind of? Yes, and the results haven't been super good. There's a lot of nuance to taxes. There's a lot of nuance to that kind of finance work, because what happens is there's interpretation of law, and then there's precedent and all that. There are people making data systems for that, but what they're gonna do, this is an important detail, what they're gonna do is they're gonna make these for themselves, just like we made level 3 support guys, and you'll never know that they have them. They'll do it so that it'll take them 11 minutes to solve your work, and they'll charge you the 4 hours. What's not gonna happen for some amount of time is that things like that, where there's so much gray area, that won't be easily publicly available, because lawsuits would ensue. Here's what's crazy though. We do use things like these GPT tools to diagnose medical conditions. 96% accurate. By the way, humans are 91% accurate before you got a little fuzzy on that detail. Arnold Schwarzenegger's coming any day to kill us all, and it's probably okay. There are things that the technology does really well, and things like taxes. Here's the sad, semi-humorous answer. Taxes aren't meant to be black and white. Taxes are meant to be an art because they're supposed to be confusing and they're supposed to confuse business owners. And that is the sad, cynical truth, is they're meant to confuse you. If not, why wouldn't they just make solid set percentages and we go, yep, that's what I pay, and then we call it a day? That's the sad answer. Sorry, Robert. Anyone else want me to bum you out?
Seeing none. Chris, thank you very much. Oh, we got one in front. Susan? Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Chris. So, like the podcast example you gave, what do you think is going to happen with the value around authenticity in this new place? Like, where's that, will we still have that value? Is it going to become something different, or is it just gone because nobody can tell what's real and what isn't?
It's a good question. Value of authenticity. I wrote a book about trust agents in 2009 with a guy named Julian Smith, who's Canadian, for those of you in the room who are equally afflicted. Authenticity is a word I don't use a lot because I think that a lot of times people who use that word are trying to fabricate it. It's like when they say fresh scent, and fresh scent means anything but that truth. But that aside, the concept of authenticity, the idea is this person real? Is this person baloney? I mean, how many people at least have some opinion of me based on this talk? How many people are like, oh, I did not know that's what he was going to be like? And how many people's opinion was different than what they thought it was going to be based on the topic and all that? Yeah. So there's always going to be a place for human interaction. There's always real human bedside manner. But I'll give you the other side of that. There's a guy that I work with. He's in financial planning and analysis, so he's a money guy. He helps manage our budget for 800-ish people across very many globals. And he is great at many things, but what he has is zero bedside manner. I said, if you were a doctor, you would roll in on roller skates right by the patient and go, you have cancer, and go right out of the room. I said, you are the worst bedside manner person I know. So I set up a GPT for him. How do you Broganize this just a little bit? How do you try to give people the warm answer? I think there are ways that tools can help us get better at authenticity. You know, by the way, who loves that sort of thing? People who are neurodiverse. People who are neurodiverse don't always understand facial expressions, they don't understand idioms, they don't understand tone of voice. Sarcasm is hard. I taught my kids sarcasm as their first language. By the time they got to school, they had to learn English because they didn't have it. Sure they didn't. They spoke sarcasm. I think that there's a place for authenticity, but where it isn't is in things like the same reason we use video is so that people can see our face and get a better understanding of us. The reason Nixon lost to Kennedy was because he was a sweaty mess on stage, and Kennedy looked like the kind of guy you'd hang out with. We are watching that right now for reasons I'm still not fully understanding in the U.S. election, because there's people who I like that one. Okay. And I can mean that for either side, by the way, so we don't have to fight later. I don't want either of them. But the place for authenticity still exists. I think the delivery mechanism of how we consume our stuff, like when I told you I've got this cool transcript thing for YouTube, at least a 30 were like, so what? I don't like YouTube. Well, guess what? Lots of people watch YouTube, billions and billions of viewing hours. It is a way to convey information that billions of people are looking for. But you know what they're not looking for? Someone to talk real slow, real boring, lots of sidebars. I'm not a Joe Rogan guy, 2-hour-ish podcasts. So I'll look for those 10-minute clips just to hear what the guest has to say, because I don't care what Joe wants to say, but I'm sometimes interested in the guest, and I make my little transcript robot do that, meaning I don't care how authentic or not authentic the person is in this case. I'm mainlining the data, and I think we'll see some of that. I think we'll see people kind of want to get to the chase. When I was at the height of my speaking career, people would sometimes argue about my speaking fee, which was pretty significant. And I would say, you know what's really cool is you go buy my book for 14 bucks. Just put that on the stage and see how it goes. And they were like, well, you know, there's probably a lot more information in the book. I said, wow, is there? Because there's no way in an hour or 40 minutes I could cover everything in my book. You're a wizard. And they were like, so what am I paying for? I said, I have yet to figure this out. However, the basic concept is I'm going to give people in the audience some set of insights, and they're going to at least have one idea that they're like, oh, I should think about that some more. And maybe I'll entertain them a little bit. That's the thing. So tools like AI, they're going to bolster up a lot of people. We're not getting to max headroom anytime soon. Or are we? People are going to these virtual concerts like crazy. I went to 3 concerts this summer, which, by the way, I haven't gone to a concert since I was 18, but my kid is 18, and so they wanted to go to a lot of them. And I went and I saw one band, AJR. They had a play track or whatever, a backtrack, and I felt my old manness coming out because I was like, well, this sucks. They're just pushing play on a tape deck and kind of sort of singing over it and sort of playing some instruments over it. But if they let go of all of everything, it would still play. This blows. And then I saw Weezer, and Weezer plays like you want them to play like a band. But the difference was AJR put on this huge performance, and it was very interesting, like Taylor Swift and whatever her thing's called. Some bazillion people want to go see Taylor Swift pretend to sing over a talk track, and not that many people want to go see Weezer do it live for real. Is authenticity winning? Not to Taylor. So what we say we want and what we want is as different as what your browser history tells me versus what you really do. When I ask you what music you listen to, and then I ask Spotify what music you listen to, your face turns red, right? So there's still some spaces, there's still some air in there for that to not happen the way we want it. Everybody have a good morning? Everybody good? You happy? There's way better stuff coming. Well, according to somebody's laptop, I have 5 minutes, but I'm going to leave you to it. Why don't you guys go away? Thank you so much for your time.
Chris Brogan of Appfire. If you missed your moment to ask Chris...